When Roderick first came to Richardson Hartley Law, we realised that it was a classic case of what we would call a romance scam. And in this type of scam, unfortunately, the victim falls in love with someone. And in this case, Roderick's case, he fell in love with a lady in Kenya via a messaging app. A relationship developed, or so he thought. And over quite a period of time, the relationship, he felt, developed to such a stage that they started to make plans to get married and for Roderick to move over to Kenya. And unfortunately, the scam then developed into persuading Roderick to send large sums of money over to Kenya. He transferred it out of his Charter Savings Bank here to his Halifax account. From there, he paid it into a money transfer service to exchange it into Kenyan shillings. And the sums involved were very large. It was £75,000. And the scammer had convinced Roderick that those monies were going to be used to fund a marital home for them in Kenya. He flew over after transferring the money to Kenya and unfortunately then got stranded there because the messaging stopped. He was unable to locate the lady in question. She stopped replying to any communication whatsoever. And at that point, Roderick realised that he'd been the victim of a scam and unfortunately didn't have the necessary financial wherewithal to even buy a plane ticket back to England. So at the point that we became involved, Richardson Hartley Law tried to make contact with Halifax, the bank in question that he transferred the sums out of. And unfortunately, we encountered a little bit of difficulty in communicating with the Halifax about Roderick. Bear in mind, he was stranded in Kenya at the time. And the Halifax wouldn't give us an email address so that we could communicate with them quickly and effectively to try and recover Roderick's funds. And unfortunately, they insisted that we had to send a letter through the normal postal system, so in hard copy. And to date, we've not received a reply to that correspondence. So what we've attempted to do in the correspondence with the Halifax is remind them of the voluntary code that many of the banks have signed up to, which puts certain obligations on the banking institutions to protect vulnerable people like Roderick from this type of scam and identify the customers within their banking database that do have vulnerabilities that would make them more likely to be a victim of this scam than perhaps some of the other customers. And when these large sums of money were being transferred, firstly out to the savings bank and then out of his Halifax account, we would have expected, in accordance with that voluntary code, the bank to make pretty stringent inquiries as to why the monies were suddenly being moved in such large sums and for what purpose they were being moved and to whom. And if those obligations had been followed, we think this scam could have been either stopped completely or stopped a lot earlier than it had been, and perhaps Roderick not have lost quite as much money as he did in the end.